Hi, and this is Cleric, and welcome to my top 5 Armored Core games. Now, let me preface this a little bit. This is my personal top 5 Armored Core games. I realize Armored Core has a lot of different variations as far as the fan base goes, what games they like or don't like, what they think kind of ruined or wasn't in the spirit of the game. These are just my personal takes as far as games I personally like the most. It was kind of hard to, I was thinking top 10 at first, but in all reality, top 10 was too much, only cutting out a few games at that point, so I figured I'd do top 5 with a couple honorable mentions. So without further ado, let's get to number 5. Armored Core Project Phantasma. Now, I almost gave this the OG, which is the original creation, the original game, Armored Core. But in all honesty, this is my personal favorites, and so I figure with Project Phantasma, it's hard to argue. In my personal opinion, yeah, there were less missions in general. Yes, it was much more linear, but I like Stinger as a boss personally. I like his increasingly more disturbing behavior and crazy tirades he goes on, and I like the boss fights against him. And personally, the biggest thing is the addition of the arena. The arena was huge. Like it became a staple from the games from that point on. Obviously, another age notwithstanding. But the arena was such a big deal because that's kind of where people got their first big taste, because with it being such a niche game, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for a lot of people to do versus or PvP. So the arena was kind of our early taste, so to speak, of just going in, designing an AC and figuring out the best build either against particular other AI ACs or find out your own personal style, which Armored Core has a lot to do with. Some like the big bulky tanks, some like doing the more lightweight and staying in the air longer. Project Phantasma gave people to kind of flex their muscle, try different designs, and then from there go against different ACs and figure things out as far as how they personally like to play the game. So for that reason, Project Phantasma gets my number 5 slot. Let's go number 4. Armored Core 2. Look, the game is just great. It's a great game. The whole storyline with Leos Klein. Now, I know I jokingly, I realize Armored Core has never had necessarily the much or most of like the most rich storyline. You had to go through the mail in order to really get a good lot of context for what was happening in the world. But in all reality, Armored Core 2, I liked running into the random ACs periodically. The graphical upgrade from 1 to 2 is astonishing. Don't get me wrong, 1 was ahead of its time as far as customization and the options go. The RGB alone was something that you didn't see very often in games. But Armored Core 2 and seeing that new engine on the PlayStation 2, man, oh man, this game was exciting to get to play. And honestly, you had a lot of standards that Armored Core 2 set. You have like the radiators with heat. I know some of you don't like heat. I understand. I know it's not Armored Core 6 either, which I know a lot of people are pretty happy about. But it did give, there was a lot of things that were introduced in Armored Core 2 that continued on throughout the area. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, Leos Klein, memorable villain, and also a very memorable arena. We all hate you, Matthias. And it was hard for me to just kind of figure out, like, you know, from this era, AC2 was just a good game. And I think with it being just plain out a good game, it kind of deserved a spot in the top 5. So we get to number 3. Armored Core Silent Line. Now, I mentioned originally that this is my personal top 5. I'm not saying one of the top 5 or one of the best, like when I think Armored Core, what is the best Armored Core games? This is my personal top 5. So I'm giving my reasons for being top 5, and this has a lot to do with the fact of how it affected me personally. The reason why Silent Line, shall we say, ranks so high for me, it's 2 main reasons. Number 1, this is where I found my personal preference for heavy bipeds. Up until that point, I did a lot of pluses, did a lot of plow, but 3 kind of made you pick your lane with op-I being a thing, so you either go op-I with plus or not and get the other optional parts. And this game solidified me quite a bit in the heavy biped range. Now, the reason why, for those, hit my mic, sorry about that. The reason why I say cemented this is this. Throughout different games, different franchises, you have, for another game I played a lot was Counter-Strike. You had the people who were really good with snipers. You had people who were really good with the ARs, the rifles. You had people who were really good with like the SMGs. You had different people who had different specialties and things of that nature. Every game has a thing that kind of divides certain groups as far as what they like to use and play. Funnily enough, in Armored Core, the common division was the leg type. We had things like the Reverse Joint Legion, which was all people just use reverse joint legs. You had the Quad Squad, which just used quads. We had Colossus Faction, which was something that we essentially it wasn't necessarily one leg type, we just like heavy things. But the leg types often signified a certain signature playstyle, especially in SL, because SL, if you weren't using OpEye, the leg types had a pretty major impact as far as what weapons you did or did not use. So with that being said, the secondary reason is this. Silent Line was the first ever in-person Armored Core tournament I played in. We had what's called Ravens of Peoria, run by my best friend Zealous. He brought a bunch of people in, a whole bunch of people hauled in their PS2s and their CRT televisions, and we set up some Firewire hubs and some cables, hooked up some systems, and we had I think there was, I'm trying to remember this quick, I think there was like 16 or 18 people at that event, I could be wrong, and it was honestly my first ever tournament experience like that period, and it was awesome. Seeing a whole bunch of other people play, like I had been a part of the A3C forums that Tierson created and was a part of. You saw people like, oh, I liked OB, Overboost, and that was obviously Exceed Orbit was a thing too. You know, what do I like, different types? You know, he had the whole OpEye versus not OpEye, you know, war that was waged quite a bit. And it was awesome to see different people in person, watch their gameplay, watch their play styles, watch what weapons they used. It was a pretty big inspiration. And honestly, after walking away from that tournament is where, Zealous probably remembers this, where I literally sat in his basement probably for a solid 4 to 5 hours trying individual parts till I figured out what I liked, and I really just fully solidified myself as what I, even today, which is a heavy biped main, and that's even as I go reverse and go back and play older games, I find myself reverting back to, once again, the heavy biped leg type. So Silent Line was a pretty big deal for that reason for me. So we're gonna get to number 2. Now, number 2, a lot of people probably thought it was gonna be number 1. For a lot of people I know, especially the old school, you know, original Armored Core players, or somebody like to call themselves Ravens, it's this game. Number 2 for me is Last Raven. Now, to me, I think if I were going to rank the top 5 all-time greatest Armored Cores just on sheer merit, I would have a hard time not putting Last Raven at number 1. This game is phenomenal. I know it gets a lot of flack for its painful difficulty, not good difficulty. It is painful. It hurts. The game hurts a lot, and there's a lot of things you have to go through. But I can tell you, since I was solidified as heavy biped at this point, and I had a hard time doing anything else because my brain was so built into heavy biped, that I played all the way through this game and beat all the missions and got all the storylines and everything using a heavy biped. So it doesn't have to, you have to be some super lightweight fast thing that runs around like crazy. If you have the right kind of twitch dodging, you know, kind of shimmies, you can actually play this game pretty well, even on a slower moving AC. And honestly, the bosses, the ACs, the pretend, you know, Jacko, Nida, you know, with Genobi and everything, the different pulverizers, it was just overall the game. When I think of Armored Core, I think of Last Raven. This is kind of like the pinnacle in my mind. Yeah, it just had a ton of variety and a lot of options, and we played a lot of tournaments with this, and honestly, Last Raven is just good. So let's get some honorable mentions here. Now, For Answer. I think it deserves an honorable mention. This is kind of the era where I got even more heavily involved in the Armored Core Online forums. During this era is when I went from being a mod to being an admin and helping run the site. There were a ton of tournaments that were run by various groups. I mean, this is when Armored Core Online was huge. We had tons of members we had to keep track of because we had hundreds of thousands of people on there, with like anywhere from like 10 to 15,000 daily active users. It was during my college years, and this was a very busy time of life for that reason. And I can tell you there was a lot of things going on here. And FA, I know a lot of people kind of complain that it simplified things too much. It made things too easy. It made everyone automatically, you know, with the back cannons and flying in the air and shooting them. And with the quick boost introduction, a lot of people thought it was kind of controversial because all of a sudden our ACs went from being these kind of slow moving machines that had some purpose to them to, here, let me press this button and choo and go across the screen. Look, it was a different twist, and I realized it was a fairly major departure from the original Armored Core games. That being said, you can honestly thank Armored Core For Answer for a lot of current fans who even still play this series to this day. There was a ton of people who were introduced to this game because of For Answer. And even now on the Armored Core Discord, there's people constantly in the 4answer channel, and they're running tournaments and running verses and things of that nature. Like this particular part of Armored Core 4answer actually has a lot of active player bases from all the Armored Core series in general. And I personally did like Stun and Whack. I liked it. It was fun. Big heavy bazooka arms with a wing cannon on the back. It did damage. Stun them, whack them, even through the lag that was online play. Unfortunately, lag was a huge problem in this game. But I feel like it deserves an honorable mention because it is still heavily played today. Second honorable mention, Armored Core 6. Look, I realize this is entirely too soon, but I cannot emphasize to you enough. The 5 hours I got to play with this game, it awoke a sleeping giant. Armored Core is just anything and everything my brain is currently focused on. Ever since I got done playing this game, I cannot play anything else. That's why I started up my Armored Core playthroughs again and uploading constantly, because honestly, I have a hard time playing everything. I wanted to play Baldur's Gate 3. I really haven't touched it because I don't want to. I want to play Armored Core. This game lit up something in me that it's hard to explain. And I'm telling you, it is a very much an Armored Core feeling game, and I feel like it's a very good mixture of 3rd gen, 4th gen, and 5th gen. I feel like if you are a fan of any one of those, you will see parts of that in this game, and I think for those reasons, you will heavily enjoy it. So I really give this game a chance. I think this could be something pretty phenomenal and pretty awesome. Now, so what's my number 1? Armored Core Nexus. Now, I know a lot of people, this is not your favorite game. I know the heat mechanic in this game was, shall we say, a little bit much. And I will fully admit, I fully exploited the heat mechanic in this game. The Zealous arms were insane. Dual verts, the urchin inside part, which I love the urchin parts. I remember the first time I saw those things get put down and someone's heat gauge is going off the charts. I fell in love with this game for a myriad of reasons. Number 1, now some people really like this playstyle. I'm not bashing you if you like this playstyle. I like the fact that it got rid of plus again, and it made the leg parts matter. One of the biggest problems I had with previous games with plus, it made the leg types. So those who aren't aware, you had bipeds had to kneel if you wanted to fire a back cannon. Quads could fire back cannons as long as they were stationary, as long as they were on the ground and not flying. And tanks could fire back cannons from wherever. Plus, completely remove the point of having different leg types for the most part. Now, they still have their advantages and disadvantages in general, but the biggest reason to use certain leg types was how back cannons were fired. I remember watching my friend Zealous on his quad and his GNL on the back, and you'd see him start doing a little strafe across the ground. You know, a giant, grenade was about to try to hit you in the face. It invoked a little tiny twinge of fear knowing what was about to come. It mattered a lot. So with Nexus, with the part changes, with plus being gone and leg parts mattering again, it was really cool to get to see everyone's individual playstyles really come into even further fruition. Now, I realize some people dropped off at Nexus because plus was gone. They thought plus was a big part of what they enjoyed about the game, and for that reason they got out. Look, if that's you, I understand. You just kind of want to fly around and go crazy with a mech a la Gundam style. I understand if that's what you like. I'm not gonna completely shove you to the side. I like the more slower pace in general, which is why I enjoyed Nexus in general. The secondary thing with Nexus is honestly the remix missions. Like the second disc was just, the remakes on the older missions are some of the most fun. And honestly, the soundtrack on this game is amazing. Some of the remix tracks, the old ones, some of the original ones, Nexus has just some of the best soundtrack in all the Armored Core games, just in general. And then you get to what I call my first major staple called Grammaton. I know it's called my AC's Grammaton. This was my crazy FA, Selena Core, Cetus arms, dual vert missiles with missile extensions, inside part urchins, my heat monster. I would just heat and heat and heat, and anything you hit, it pretty much from any angle, close up or far away. Even being on a heavy biped, I could keep up turning speed wise, and you would pay for it to get up close. And if you try to far away, I just go with vertical missiles, and you pay for that reason. So in all honesty, there's a lot of things that happen with this build that I didn't get to go to the tournament that would have potentially, I'm not gonna say I would have won it, because who knows actually what would have happened. But I remember I showed this build off at the gathering we had with a bunch of people, and they showed my build off to the tournament organizer, and they said, yeah, that's banned. And so who knows, I might have been able to use it when it got to happen. So when I say I came with this monster build, So this monster build happened because I was currently at that very time while playing this game, right after it came out, I was in a pain. Let's put it this way. I was on pain meds and nausea meds and chemotherapy because while this game was right after this game came out, I was going through cancer treatments. I was diagnosed with the ALL, or acute lymphoblastic leukemia. I went up going to St. Jude as an 18-year-old. They took me out of case, and I ended up going there and living there for quite a few months. And I can tell you, Armored Core was a big part of my distraction from the pain and the misery and the discomfort I was feeling while playing this game. Now, I came up with what I call the monster, which was that build I just mentioned earlier, while in that fueled stupor of a myriad of different pharmaceuticals being in my system because of the chemotherapy. But I was looking at how much I love Nexus so much. I was thinking about this. And in all reality, I think it pretty much can be boiled down to this. When I first got diagnosed and I was in the hospital, one of the first people to come on my door was Zealous. I think it was my second day in the hospital. He came and visited me. And that's when I gave him the news, what I was diagnosed with. His family, obviously, he was concerned. My family was concerned. And that was right before I was a candidate for going to St. Jude. They actually signed me up for surgery the next morning. I woke up the next morning with a doctor from St. Jude canceling it and saying I'm a candidate, and they accepted me to go to Memphis. So instead, I'm going to be leaving another 24 hours from now to go down to Memphis and start my treatment there instead. So the morning I was leaving, Zealous came by again. And Armored Core Nexus had just come out. And he had his copy with him. He said, like, hey, I just went by and picked up my copy that I got. And then he handed it to me. He's like, I want you to have it. Oh, I'm going to try not to cry. He's like, I want you to have it. Now, I'll be honest with you, Armored Core was not in my brain in any way, shape, or form at that point because I had just been told 48 hours before that I had cancer. So they know 18-year-old wants to hear. And then to see my best friend just walk up and go, here's my copy of the game, enjoy. Everyone needs a friend like that. They just do. And I think that might be part of the reason why Nexus is such a big deal to me. It furthered the concrete idea in my head of how amazing this person was. And in all reality, giving up his copy for me that he just wouldn't paid his own money for. When you go into a dark time, you're going to be going through a lot of waiting in hospitals and waiting in hospital rooms. I remember having my dad set up the PS2 with the cords like strewn across the room, and the nurses had to be careful because they didn't like trip it over and like break it or something. And I remember playing this game, and I'll be honest with you, I had to go play through this game an entire second time story mission wise because I didn't remember my first time playthroughing it because that's how much of a haze I was in. But while in that haze, I created that crazy monster of an AC. So from a personal standpoint, that is why this game is so important to me. There's so much about this game that I feel like made the right directional changes for the series that I think eventually got perfected in Last Raven. And I feel like it stands the test of time on its own. So I know a lot of people kind of give it a hard time for a variety of reasons. And not saying it's not undeserved, but I'm thinking you really should give this game a chance. So that's it. That is my personal top 5 Armored Core games. If you enjoyed this and want more things like this, I'm thinking about maybe doing my top 10 like music tracks, my top 5 or top 10 bosses or villains. Who knows? If it's something you enjoy, if you want more information on this, please let me know. Like and subscribe, comment on the thing. Let me know what you want, and I will see you in the next video.